back to another new episode of Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. We're here tonight, going to be joined by my guest, Albert. Albert has a very interesting story that happened, and he was kind enough to come on here and talk about it with us. Before we bring him on, if you've ever had an experience and you'd like to be on Tinfoil Tales, you can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. That's tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, and we will get you scheduled for a future episode. If you would like to find us on Facebook, that's where I do most of my activity at. It's on there. We're also on Twitter. We have an Instagram. Obviously, we're on YouTube as well, depending on where you're listening to these episodes at. If you'd like to help us out, you can share the podcast around. You can leave us a review. That helps with rankings. Anything you can do to help, I really appreciate it. And it's definitely something that helps grow with the podcast. But with that all being said, we're going to bring Albert on in, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Albert. Thanks for coming out and talk to me.
Hey, Brandon, thank you for having me.
Not a problem. You'd sent me your published story, and it really piqued my interest, and I definitely wanted to have you come on here and talk about it because it's something that's right up I think, my listeners' interest as well. But
Definitely. Now, this experience, it's one of the only ones I've really had, but it stood out. It stood out from anything I've ever experienced in my life. And maybe I've had experiences that I wasn't able to, to identify, but as I got more into cryptids, reading about cryptids, I started paying attention to more things. And then I don't know what I tapped into. I don't mess around with anything that would bring it to my house or anything like that, but this experience just happened out of the blue, and it happened while my wife was pregnant, and then we moved in some new property, and I don't know what that property brought with it, but yeah.
I don't know how in depth you want to go, like location wise, but whereabouts are you located?
So I live in San Antonio, Texas. I'm in the south part of the city right now. I'm in the city limits, but where the story takes place, it took place in South Bexar County, which is the same county with the county where San Antonio is located in. But it took place more in the rural areas. My mother-in-law's property is more in the countryside.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly like state-wise, like where at and vicinity or anything like that. So,
and it's funny too because last night we were watching the Dogman Triangle. Did you get a chance to check that out yet?
I was actually watching that the other night. I still have about half of it left.
Yeah, and it's funny enough that the Triangle Point started here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And cool stories on there. I did on the little podcast I was doing, I did a little featurette on the Converse wolf, and it's a real interesting story. And I tried getting on the comments to chat with I forgot his name, Lyle Blackburn. He's one of the guests on that video, and I was commenting on there because he's saying he was looking for the Converse wolf area, and I found it, and it's very hard to find here. There's locations that are talked about online, but I went looking for it myself, and it's a location that he mentioned called Skull Crossing, but you have to be careful how you spell it because they don't spell it like Skull SKLULL. They spell it with SCUL, and you're getting close to the area because the ranches out there have signs that say Lobo Lane, Lobo Street, and Lobo in Spanish is wolf. And we found that little area where the supposed child was murdered. Pretty cool, man.
That was supposed to be back in what, like the early 1900s, roughly?
Yeah, I think late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah, I just watched some of it the other night. Like I said, I haven't made it all the way through, but I remember they said that the accounts go from like late 1800s, early 1900s, and then something said maybe the 1960s, but
yeah,
the details of that doesn't seem to add up. So they think it's more back like 100 something years ago, which would make more sense than anything in the 1960s, I would think. But
I think it got a little more populated in the area as well in the 60s, 70s. So I don't think, I could see it being more late 1800s, 1900s setting.
I've been looking into some things. I've actually saw something today. It was on Reddit, and I didn't actually get on there and read it, but apparently recently, I guess there was some attacks in Kentucky that they ruled as an animal attack, but people are thinking it was another dogman attack.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no, see, and here in Texas, because I follow the Dogman thing like pretty extensively. I have most of Linda Godfrey's books and rest her soul. I didn't know she passed away until recently, and that really made me sad.
Yeah,
I love her work, her books, her movies. The Beast of Bray Road movie is like the best Dogman movie. It's
I
really
actually
creepy.
the band that I have or had, we actually have a song that came out a couple years ago called "The Beast of Bray Road."
No way.
Yep, we
Y'all
actually have
got
a
it
T-shirt.
online? I need to check that out.
Yeah, I'll send you a link here afterwards.
Cool.
But yeah,
There's a
basically, I had a similar experience with something, and that's what kind of led me to write that song. It's kind of got me into looking at these cryptids, anyways.
uh-huh.
But yeah, definitely. I haven't actually read her books or anything about it. So, like, I've read the stories online and everything else, but I've never actually got into her books. But I know she recently passed away, so that was kind of a blow, I guess, to the cryptid community.
Definitely, definitely. She was a pioneer in it. When she brought it out with the Beast of Bray Road, that's when I think the Dogman theory just blew up. And it's I mean, not that it's not been out for a while, but I think she just mainstreamed it real well.
Yeah. I said when I first started looking into stuff in 2007, right after my incident, I drew a picture of something and I went onto some website. I think it was unexplainedmysteries.com or something like that forum. And I posted up a picture and someone was like, "Oh, it looks like a Michigan dog man." I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
what?" I
Oh.
never even heard of that before. And that's when I started digging into stuff more. And I was like, huh, apparently there is some weird things out this way.
And it's funny too because there's a heavy metal band called the Beast of Bray Road. I actually have them on my Facebook. Cool guys.
Nice. I'll have to check them out.
And so I talk about the Dogman thing because I feel like what we experienced is related to that in some way. Another person brought up Skinwalker as well, and I feel like Skinwalker Dogman can go hand in hand sometimes.
Yeah. Ironically enough, my band also had a song called Skinwalker.
Nice.
We had, I guess we had a cryptid vibe going on, but I didn't intentionally
Dude,
do that. But
cryptids rule, man.
yeah, but no,
So,
I've always, I think too, other people have told me my incident might have been a skinwalker as well. And I was like, man, I don't know what it was to this day. It's been 15, 16 years ago. I don't know what the hell it was.
uh
Probably never will. And I wouldn't mind figuring it out, but if it meant having to actually encounter something again, I'm the one that would,
yeah.
I'd like to see it, but at the same time, I'd like not to see it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, I always Navajo or even Hispanic Mexican culture or their little mythology over here in the South, they always say if you look at it and you make eye contact or anything, it's gonna follow you around. And I don't want that happening.
Yeah.
So they're kind of crazy over here on this. The more south you get, yeah, they if they see it, they look away.
Yeah. That's probably not a bad thing.
Yeah. So
But
would you like me to get into the story or?
yeah, you can go ahead right on.
Cool, man. So this incident took place, I would say late, it started late 2014. It started with my wife, and she was pregnant. She was about maybe 5 or 6 months pregnant, showing a little. And started late at night. We were gonna go get some food. I remember we were both loading up into my car. It was just me and her. And her mom. We were staying at her mom's place at the time, which is here again, like I said, in South Bear County, the rural areas. It's she owns 8 acres of land, and behind her is like 10,000 acres of woods. And so there's not much back there. At least there shouldn't be, just a bunch of wildlife. Um, we were loading up in the car, and I was already in the car. I had started up because it was already cold. It was about November or late October, starting to get chilly out there. So I went out, warmed up the car, turned on the heater for her, and the car was maybe about like 50, 60 feet from the house, and we were parked next to a tree. The only thing is, out there it's super dark, so it's pitch black. So I turned on my headlights, and wherever the headlights shine, that's all you're gonna see. And so I had the headlights facing towards her mom's front door. She was coming out the front door, and she kind of turned to the side. Now again, behind her mom's house is wooded area, dense wood. And she turned to the side. I saw her make a turn to the woods, and she just kept walking my way towards the vehicle. She got in the car, and she was like, she was telling me, I heard my mom call me from the woods. I heard my mom's voice from the woods. So she's like, I had to do a double take there, and I thought it was coming from the house, but at the same time, her mom's in a wheelchair as well. So she, I was like, well, do you wanna go back just to make sure she didn't yell out for you? You know, if she needs help or something, anything. And she was like, yeah, let me go check. Now again, we weren't expecting something paranormal to happen. We're living out there, you're used to, knocks on the woods, or, all kinds of wildlife sounds out there. Now, she went back inside and asked her mom, hey, did you call me? Did you yell out for me? And her mom was like, no, no, and her mom's very old school. She was like, no, oh, are you losing your mind? And she laughed it off.
You
And
didn't hear anything yourself?
I didn't hear nothing myself. I was already in the vehicle, and I was just
Okay.
making sure that it wasn't too dark for her to walk to the vehicle.
Yeah.
And she came back out, and she was halfway to the car, and she stopped. My wife stopped and looked back again, and then she kind of like gunned it to the car, not ran, but she just sped up the walking to my vehicle. She got in the car, and she was like, I heard my mom's voice again, and I'm sure, I'm 100% sure it came from the woods. I was like, it sounded like your mom. It was your mom. And she was like, yes, I heard my mom's voice clearly calling me from the woods. My wife's name is Peggy. It's a funny joke, side joke. I'm Al, she's Peggy, married with children. Anyways, um she came to the vehicle, and she was blown away. We're not expecting paranormal stuff to happen. And she heard her mom's voice clearly from the woods calling her Peggy, 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 loud. And she we were both kind of like floored. We didn't know what to think. Uh, so we went to get the food, and we just kind of like buried it. We were like, okay, we'll just let that be. Now, nothing happened again. At least we didn't pay attention or anything. It was My daughter was born in January, that the next year, 2015, which is like maybe 3 months later. And we had bought a single wide home cash because we wanted to get out of her mom's place. And her mom had 8 acres of property, so we put a single wide home there. And we moved in, stayed there for a few months, and everything was fine. And this incident, it I guess it peaked. Something big happened, and that we weren't expecting, which was the other half of the story. Um, we were asleep one night, and her son. Okay, so I'll back up. I'll describe the house a little. The main bedroom was towards the street. Again, it's a single wide. Our main bedroom was towards the highway, and the kids' rooms were on the opposite side of the house, away from the highway. So they were more towards her mom's slash the woods. And her son was in his room by himself, and we had the newborn with us, our newborn. And we were asleep, and I heard the chain rattling to our chain lock to the door. I heard it rattling, and oh man, I thought someone was breaking in. I gunned it. I dove for my firearm, and I thought someone was literally breaking in. And I cracked open our door. I swung it open actually, and her son was standing at the door, opening the door with his backpack, his school stuff on, everything. It's 3 in the morning, 2:33 in the morning. Her son is standing at the door, about to leave the house with his backpack on, with his clothes on, school clothes, ready to go. And I was thrown off. I was thrown off really bad. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And he looked at me, and he was like, "Mommy told me to come outside. She said, get ready, dress up in your school clothes, come outside, get your backpack, come outside. I'm outside waiting for you." And I was like, Mommy's in bed asleep.
How old is he? Was he at the
At,
time?
at the time, he was 7 or 8,
Okay.
and now he's 13 or 14.
Okay.
Now, I asked him, where did you hear your mom calling you from? And he was like, it was outside my window. She knocked, and then she started calling my name. And then I answered, and she said, "Come outside, put your clothes on, get your backpack on, and come outside." And I stood there and I was like, I'm trying to make sense of what he just told me. And I was like, "You heard your mom's voice clearly from the window." And he's like, "Yes, and mommy's outside waiting for me." And I was like, "Mommy's in bed asleep with Adelaide, or my daughter." And I told him, "Go back to bed." And I was like, "You sleep on the couch. I'm gonna close up the window." I searched the window. I looked out the window. I shined a flashlight outside, and something was trying to get him to come outside. Something spoke to him, and I believe it was the same voice that was trying to speak to my wife when she was pregnant, to come in her mom's, with using her mom's voice, mimicking. The thing is, I'm not sure like how clear the voice sound. I've never heard. I'm the only one who has never heard the voice, and so I'm not sure how clear it sounded to them. But yeah, I don't. It's something that me and my wife, when I tell my friends this story, and especially when we're having a drink and it's late at night, they are. It's the mystery of mysteries, man.
Yeah.
It's something we just don't know to how to explain what happened and what was trying to get him to come outside. And one, the voice was trying to lure my wife while she was pregnant, and then two, the voice that sounded like my wife was trying to lure the 7-year-old who was sleeping by himself. And so we weren't sure what kind of
How
it sounds malevolent.
how long had her mom lived there?
Her mom has probably been there for about 20 years, maybe
And
longer.
did she ever mention anything strange ever happening out there that she's aware of?
So they inherited the land from an adopted grandmother. They met this lady years ago, and she helped them out with a place to live. She would make jokes when they would hear. I don't know if you ever heard like the Bigfoot yelping, the
Yeah. The
what.
yelps, the whoops.
Yes, and the lady that they inherited the land for would say, "Just ignore it. It's just the wood booger." She's apparently, before they moved in, she said she would feed whatever was out there making that noise. And so,
That's interesting because I've listened to other podcasts to talk about people that had like encounters with like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever.
mm,
And some people have reported that they do mimic people's voices. They've heard, I'm pretty sure one was calling out the lady's name,
wow.
and like, and it was always off to the edge of the wood. Like they were trying to like imitate the sound. Like they'd hear someone yelling out for the name of their kid or something, and that the name would be yelling back out from the woods.
Now,
So that's kind of creepy.
oh, definitely. And the thing is too, at the time, and this is a different aspect, I guess, is the skinwalker thing. I was getting big into the skinwalker thing, and I was doing research, and I finally came upon a article, or maybe a video, of a Navajo tribesman talking about looking up the skinwalker, and how eventually you start looking into it too much that it's going to start looking for you. And that kind of like blew me away when I read that information, because at the time I was reading a lot about the skinwalker. I wasn't practicing no, craft or anything to bring it over or anything like that. But the way the tribesman described is like, if you keep looking into something that you're not supposed to be looking into, it's going to start looking for you. And so that kind of blew my mind.
I actually just the episode I think that came out last week. Like I mentioned on that one, but I got the same warning from a random person on Facebook last year that
Right.
when you start looking into certain things start looking back.
Yep. And I kind of believe that. I do, because it's a forbidden lore, man. Like, are we really supposed? It's something that was maybe used as a weapon in the Navajo religion.
Hmm.
And from all the things I've read about it, this is like something that, like, when these witch doctors put that thing to use, it's not for anything good. And so, what are we to be doing looking into this into depth? Things start. I guess the energies around us start wondering, what are we asking for?
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about the Native American. Like, I know that different tribes have different stories of skinwalkers. Some think they're the actual witch doctor themselves that was overtaken by like the actual animal or whatever, spirits or something.
Hmm.
And then other ones think they're actually like just straight up, I wouldn't call them a monster, but they're some sort of thing they've conjured up, some sort
Yeah.
of spirit beast. I think it's strange that there's been stories of these and obviously like Dogman and Bigfoot, werewolf, whatever you want to call all these hairy beasts throughout the world, different different religions, different like continents basically.
Hmm.
And there's all these stories that go on from hundreds of years ago. Like hell, even the ancient Egyptians had Anubis.
Yep.
One of their gods was a dog-headed man. So I've always started,
The original Dogman.
yeah, I've always started thinking like if they're making up stories across the world years and years and years ago before there's ways of communicating with each other, why are they all making up the same similar stories
Yep.
if they're not seeing something similar?
And we all get, I believe that it's all regional description. Everything's just described by how one region sees it.
Mm-hmm. I don't
Yeah.
think that a Bigfoot and a Dogman are the same thing, but I think they're similar enough story wise. Now, a lot of people think these dogmen or whatever are straight up evil spirits. They're not actually physical beings, and other people think that Bigfoot are flesh and blood creatures because of how they act. But
Hmm.
then if you listen to a lot of the lore with these Bigfoot stories, like they just vanish, they see lights and stuff. Like there's all sorts of weird things that go on with them as well too. That's like I don't know which way to lean with it. Like if they're real, I can't explain how there's never been a body. There's never been any type of evidence that I'm aware of, other than like you've seen videos, this and that, but everyone writes that off as fake.
Hmm.
So it's like I don't know, but I know what I saw, and I can't to this day. It's still blows my mind.
Yeah.
Do you
Well,
think that I guess my what do you think it actually was?
I think it was something bad. I think it was something that was trying to really lure the, at least my wife's son out. And I think if he would have went outside, I think he would have went missing. And my wife doesn't like to think that way, but I'm realistic. What else is trying to get
Mm-hmm.
a young child to come out in the middle of the night, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah,
Just something malevolent, something that's not our friend.
that's kind of how I'd view it as well too. If one of my kids was saying that we were out calling in the middle of the night for him to come outside, clearly it's not very. I don't think I was wanting them to come out to play with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I really think that whatever it was something that was gonna make its mark and then leave.
It's just strange to me that if your mother-in-law had been out there that long and she only heard maybe an occasional thing like that, but no one ever heard any other voices calling out. Maybe
My
it does.
mother-in-law is crazy. She is she has no curtains on her windows and she is fine with that. I'm kind of a private person. I don't want to see anything out my window and I don't want anyone to see anything in my house, but she doesn't care. Um she's used to the noises out there. She's very old school, you know. I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure she always says humans are worse than the dead. Humans are worse than the bad spirits out there. And you know, that's her thing. Like if they're gonna come get me, they're gonna come get me. That's her thing. So I think she just kind of like brushes it off her shoulder.
I don't know if I can necessarily disagree with some of those statements because some humans are pretty terrible people.
Yes, sir.
Hmm. But yeah, I when it comes to these things, and I even with these some of the stuff I just was watching recently, even with these dogman encounters and stuff, people say that they do hear them calling out to them as well.
Hmm. I have a now I have a little another little segue into a story where this experience kind of like it crept up a little more with my wife. I see so at the time I was working late at night and so she was going to bed by herself and she has terrible nightmares, man, and I feel bad for her. Her nightmares, she can get on your podcast and tell you her nightmares and freak your viewers out. Um, but she had a nightmare of maybe an our mobile home at the time was about maybe 3 feet off the ground. I guess when they put it on the bricks, it's pretty high up, and so our window was about maybe 6.5 feet to see over.
Yeah.
She had a dream that a wolf creature, dogman creature, was standing eye level with her at the window, and she was in bed making eye contact with this dogman creature snarling at her. Huge snout. She described it as the head as a German Shepherd type dogman. Um, red glistening eyes, the whole cliche thing. And she said it didn't open its mouth. It wasn't talking, but it was telepathically sending her messages. And it was telling her to come to the window, open the window. I'm not your enemy. I'm your friend. Open the window. And she was freaking out. Now, in one of Linda Godfrey's books that I have, there's a lot of I forgot what it was called, telepathic invasion from dogmen, and that they one story I was reading, a lady was at home with her pit bull, and the pit bull started going nuts. It was late at night. Her husband was out for work. The pit bull started going nuts at the window. She opened the window and made direct eye contact with a dog man. She freaked out, ran to her room, but she said she kept hearing it talk to her in her head, even when she was under the covers, far away from the window. And it was telling her invasive things as well to let it in, to let it in. But my wife said she was dreaming, so I'm not sure, how.
Maybe she thinks she was dreaming.
Yeah, and that's what I told her too. I was like, are you 100% sure you were asleep? She said she doesn't know, but she just all she knows is that it was 100% fear.
Basically, I think these things are kind of, I don't know how to go about saying it without sounding like I'm a know it all or anything like that, but I think these things are almost, I won't call them demonic, but something to that, something to that kind of extent, just because what are you letting it in for? Why do you have to let it in? Like, if it's really that big and powerful, why couldn't it just come in if it wanted to?
Yeah,
Like, it's almost like the old vampire lore where you have to invite it in, you have to let
definitely.
it in. It's almost like a demon type thing of you have to let it in, you have to accept it. It's kind of strange. I don't know if they're using the wolf, if it is a evil spirit, demonic type thing, if it uses the appearance of a wolf just because, and this is just me going off on the tinfoil hat here. Maybe the old ancient Egyptians, they worship this as a god, and maybe these are just offshoots from what they worshipped. And that's the thing, is it's one of those
Yeah,
old type god things to where you have to accept it.
some small Nephilim-ish thingies.
Yes.
Now,
Uh,
it's funny that you say the demonic thing because it's all this suddenly stopped. I started visiting our local botanicas. You know what botanicas are? they're little
uh,
they're little shops that have religious items, and
okay.
Hispanics are insane about that kind of stuff. And you'll have their little idols in their houses that they get blessed, and they do the sage burning and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
After I told a certain individual about this, they kind of urged me to go, buy some holy stuff to kind of pick up
Cleanse.
the good vibes.
Yeah.
I did. I ordered candles. I did all the blessings. Well, shaman did all the blessing stuff for me. And it's something I really haven't talked about, but yeah, I used to get candles blessed and I used to have them at the house, and they would tell me how long to have a candle out, how long, and then to get this same candle until this helps ward off evil, blah, 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 all that stuff. I did it for months. I did it for a long time. Nothing ever happened again. To this day, I'll knock on some wood right now, but nothing ever happened again. I've not had any experiences. So for you, when you were saying something in the demonic sense, it kind of makes sense to me because after I started doing the anti-demonic stuff, it went away.
The episode that I just had come out, a guy had experienced a dog man, but he said it was right in the middle of the road. And the lady that was riding, or she was actually driving, like when they seen it, they didn't have time to react, so they ran through it. And by through it, it basically they both saw the same thing, but it went right through them as like they could feel like it go through them, but it didn't like do damage or anything. Like basically it was like energy. They could feel
Wow.
like a swoosh through them. So he was 100% believes that they're not a real flesh and blood thing. He says they're definitely more paranormal, spiritual type
Yeah.
entity because,
That's very interesting, man.
and I believe it because I'll talk about it here off air, but I can't explain my things that I saw that makes any normal, rational sense. And explaining, I've talked about on other stuff, so I don't want to keep bringing up and beating a dead horse on my end.
No, for sure, for sure. I got to go through your library, man.
So we're almost 40 episodes deep now.
Wow.
But yeah, basically, I've got some things that I've been trying to work on, and this dogman Sasquatch thing is always what's piqued my interest for the most part. And there's just a lot of similarities to the stories that you can't write off as just someone making stuff up because what's the point? Like what's the point of saying something that makes everyone think you're crazy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. You're not gonna benefit from being the town loon, you know?
You might get an interview on my podcast, but that's about it.
I assure you that the story that we experienced is like wow, like I've never read anything like that before. That this is and it's something that I felt like I had to share, and I have a video on it on my YouTube channel of me telling the whole story, and I also I shared it with the Paranormal Underground, and I shared it real quickly, and she said, "Send me the full story, right up, type up the full story," and she was the editor of the magazine, and she just urged, she just send it to me. I'll fix it for you, but I want to read that whole story. And when she received it, she it took her a while to get back to me, but when she got back to me, she was blown away as well. And
You
she
know,
said it's a pretty unique, horrific story, and she published it right away. So, and so I was like I was pretty happy with that. And you know, I tell it the same. I feel like when I tell everyone, I feel like it's like my my story, like what I'm famous for, even though I'm not famous, but you know, it's like my own custom story, I guess.
have are you still out on this property, or have you guys moved on since then?
No, we live in the city now.
Okay.
Uh, the crazy thing is her mom still lives out there by herself with her younger my wife's younger brother, but he's working a lot, and so she's on the property by herself a lot. But she is anti horror, anti scary, everything. She just like she doesn't watch horror movies. She hates them. So if anything scary happens, she's not phased by it. She's pretty thick skinned.
Some people are just attuned to write it off. I hear strange noises in my house, and a lot of time I don't get up and look, but sometimes I hear something and I have no choice but to go look. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know what that was, but I'm going to go look. And a lot of the time we've got dogs or something, 4 kids running around. So I always just chalk it up to something like that. But
Yeah,
basic,
out there in the where we at her mom's property. Yeah, you I can tell you that the nighttime noises. I've heard the whooping before, the Bigfoot whooping, maybe about 3 or 4 in the morning once. Very loud, very echoey, and the nighttime was very quiet. And then of course, what they say in the books and the YouTube videos, nature it gets like dead quiet out of nowhere when something alpha
mm-hmm.
is around. Yeah, it got really quiet, and all I heard was the whooping. It sounded like it was trying to call to something, but nothing answered.
The thing I kind of noticed when you're talking about when it was calling out to your stepson, you said it was about 2:33 in the morning. If it was around 3, that's usually the
Yeah,
witching
the,
hour, the
the good
demonic
old
hour.
witching hour.
Yeah. So that's kind of someone else had talked to me recently about something, and they'd mentioned 3 o'clock, 3 a.m., something. I was like, seems to always be right around 3 a.m. when all the weird stuff happens.
Yeah, yeah, it's peak hour for Yeah, paranormal stuff to come out and have its fun.
Recently, and I don't know if someone talked about it, I've been doing a lot of interviews the last couple of weeks, so I've been getting a little confused on where I'm hearing things. I still listen to other podcasts and I watch a bunch of documentaries all the time. That's pretty much what I do. And they'd mentioned midnight is like the witching hour. I was like, no, that's three. I was like, I've always heard it's like 3 in the morning, not midnight. So I don't know
Mm.
what that was, but
I guess midnight was the old school way to say things like that with Halloween and all that. I guess that's how I always took it. I always thought my parents were just like, "Oh, go to bed, midnight's coming." You know, it's just because it's called midnight. You
mm-hmm.
don't really think like 3 a.m. is the scary time when you're a child or anything like that. But once you start reading about it, you know, about the what is it, the anti-Christian time, the opposite time that Christ rose. And I think that's
Yeah,
what amplifies it more.
yeah. I think it's like he died at 3 p.m. So the devil chose 3 a.m. to mock him. And then it's also mocking the Holy Trinity. That's the Christianity version, I believe. I don't know how
Oh, I think you're
accurate that
breaking up,
is.
Brandon.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're coming in and out.
Hmm. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
That's strange. I don't know what happened.
And we start talking about that witching hour, and there you go.
This is the second time in the last 2 weeks that something strange has happened when I started talking about a certain thing. Before it was a certain 3 letter alphabet agency.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. No.
Yeah. I
Hey,
have
it means you're going a long way, man. You're going places. They're listening.
that. That's kind of what I'm wondering because there's been another podcast that I'm actually going to be doing some talking to on a future episode, and they were on another podcast talking about when they bring up topics about dogman or certain things like that, they have equipment issues and connection issues and everything else.
It might go back to the whole thing we brought up earlier about like, you know, you start talking about things you shouldn't be talking about, you know, things are going to start happening.
Yeah.
We might be drawing in something. I don't really talk about this around my wife or anything because she gets all she's a scaredy cat with these things. But with the right people like this podcast, I mean, I'm willing to blab it up about it. And I still believe that, you know, if we start talking about things that are quote forbidden, maybe we might be delving into things that hear us.
Yeah. That's kind of why I took a hiatus from doing some episodes. I went from like the end of March until June, took about a 3 month break because I was doing that other podcast, my music podcast, and I just had to step away from this stuff because there's just a lot of weird things that were kind of going on at home that
No way.
I thought maybe it's my fault for looking into stuff. So things kind of simmered down. So I'm seeing starting this back up. If weird stuff starts happening again, then I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep doing the podcast just because I'm not going to keep bringing weird things back to my own place.
Yeah, for sure, man. I feel the same. When I was getting heavily into the dogman and to the skinwalker stuff, especially the skinwalker stuff, I have a journal with a lot of information in there of locations, mountains here in Texas, all the way down to Mexico, where these things are uh high activity. And I started having really bad dreams, and I started hearing scratches at the windows, and yeah, I had to take the journal is like somewhere in my box, and I haven't really messed with it. I don't really get into it because you know I don't know if it's because that the video I watched of the Navajo tribesmen embedded in my head saying, you know, you start looking for it, it's gonna start looking for you. Got to my head, but I had paranormal equipment. I did a paranormal investigation with some friends, and we were getting deep into it. I had a guy from. Have you heard of Appy Droid? They're manufacturer in England. They make voice boxes, and I don't know. He's getting pretty big.
I
But
haven't heard it. No.
I bought some radios from him, and I bought some voice boxes from him, and some other recorders, and they're pretty sensitive equipment. A friend of mine recently passed away from COVID a couple of years ago, and me and his one of his good friends that we've all three known each other for years. Anyhow, he passed away from COVID in 2021, I think. And me and my buddy Oscar were on a little paranormal investigation. Our first professional one. We paid to be there and we were getting recorded and we did a YouTube video on a really long YouTube video. It came out really good. And the when we sparked up the what is it? I forgot what they're called now. The voice box or no, I don't remember what it's a portal, a ghost portal. We had a ghost portal made out of a guitar amp and two pedals. The guitar amp is hooked up to a noise gate with a reverb pedal. The reverb pedal shoots out the EVPs and it stretches them out so you can hear them better. And the noise gate blocks all the white noise frequency, all the garbage in the middle of the radio station while it's flipping through.
Hmm.
And it's a pretty cool thing. If you've never heard about it, look up ghost portals, man. There's some guy on YouTube who does some amazing work with them. And so we got the idea from him. So on this investigation, we right when we spark up the ghost portal, man, my buddy who passed away, his voice came on there, like clear as freaking day. And I have the recording too. And he goes, "Hey, Bert." And I noticed it right away. I said, "Hey," it said Bert in my name. And then and what did he say? It's something he said something else clearly after that. And I didn't pick up on it that it was my friend's voice. We took all the recordings back to the house, and on my sound editing software, I pulled out that one bite to listen to it again because it said my name clearly. And it was my friend's voice, like clear as day. I played it back over and over, and I was like, I sent it to my friend Oscar, and I was like, "Does that sound like him?" And he was like, "Yes." I sent it to his sister, and she was like, "Where'd you get that from?" I was like, "That's him." And she's like, "Yeah, that's his voice. Where'd y'all get? Is that an old recording?" I was like, "Dude, no." And when I told her the whole thing, she got, yeah, I was kind of emotional. I just was, I didn't mean to like, blindside her like that, but I was just in disbelief. It was so clear. And so after that, after going back to like taking a break from things, after that, I kind of took a break because I felt like things were getting a little too heated at the house with activity as well. The random knocks and sounding like something's walking in the room and everyone's asleep.
Yeah.
So I just kind of let it chill out for a little while.
Where we live, I'm actually not too far from where I had my weird encounter. And we have a couple acres and we've got goats and some chickens and stuff out back and a pole barn. And it's really, really dark back there. I asked for the electric company to put a security light back there, but they won't go back there because there's no actual driveway, I guess. They don't want
Mm-hmm.
to drive through the yard, so they won't put a light back there. So it's really, really dark back there. So anytime I have to go out back when it's nighttime, and I'm not one to be afraid of the dark or anything like that, but sometimes you go back there, it is complete pitch blackness. And when we'd first moved in, I'd went back there and next to the barn where the goats are, and it would end up being a night where it was clear outside and the moon was really bright. I see a silhouette that looked like the devil standing next to the tree, and it ended up being the goat because it had horns and it was just standing up
Oh
against the
man.
tree eating. But that scared the bejesus out of me for a split second until I realized what it was.
That's
But
funny because next door, they have a lot of cows, and at my mother-in-law's place. And while we were staying there, sometimes a cow would jump over the fence because they had mowed through their side, and we had the good grass still on our side. And so one night I was out, and my wife was there by herself, and she had the porch light on. And the porch light was very dim; it doesn't go too far, but she saw two eyeballs, two green eye reflections in the dark, and it was down on the floor. And when she noticed it, she clapped her hands because she thought it was a dog and she was trying to scare it off. But all she saw was the two green reflections,
mm-hmm.
and she slapped her hands, and the eyes went from the floor all the way to her eye level. And she got scared so bad, man. And she said they were getting bigger and bigger coming to her, and she like flipped her butt, and she turned around, it was a cow. There was a cow walking to her. It was so funny. She has to tell you that story sometime.
Yeah, it's funny what happens when you can't see things in the dark. Everyone said people are afraid of the dark. You're afraid to be alone in the dark. I was like, I've seen something floating around lately. It's you're not afraid of being alone in the dark. You're afraid of not being alone in the dark
Yep, yep.
because you never know what's out there. But yeah, I think unless you've got anything else, I think we can wrap this one up.
Cool. No, yeah, that's that.
It's definitely a story that makes you think because, again, me being a parent and everything else, I would freak out if something was trying to lure my wife or my child outside. To me, that just seems they're off
Yeah,
towards the woods.
that's the
Now,
key word, man.
yeah,
Lure. They were trying to lure him out.
it just, I can't see anything good intention wise being from that. It just sounds very, again,
It's not.
I don't
It
want to
had a.
beat
I think
the,
it had a purpose. It was there
yeah,
for a purpose.
with your wife being pregnant too, that's also another thing that makes me think is like, is it after kids? Like
Yeah,
obviously she's pregnant, she doesn't have a baby, but she's carrying a baby, and
I
then
think that's why it just called her. It didn't try and do anything else, like actually do a full sentence of communication, like it did with her son. And the thing is, her son. I guess I don't want to say it's like something super smart or intelligent, but it knew that she wasn't gonna fall for it. So it just called her name. If she went out to the woods and messed up, then yeah, something may have happened. But for a child who's not able to explain anything, and plus he was half asleep, so yeah, it's easier bait.
I've heard a story, and again, it might have been another podcast I was listening to, but someone had said that this thing looked through their window. So they ran to a different room and like out on a couch or whatever. And it was at the back door. And they could hear it like trying to get them to come open the door for it. And again, then when you hear things like this, it makes my hair kind of stand up because again, it's
The
like,
the
what?
invitation they need, right?
Yeah, I was like, what is this thing? Again, if it's big enough to look through a window and it's talking to you telepathically, which there's been stories of Sasquatch doing the same thing. You know, the TV show Survivor Man, Les Stroud, he's actually been on a before talking about how he's been, they call it mind speak, like telepathically talked to by a Sasquatch, which that dude's like a renowned survivalist guy, has his own TV shows and does everything on his own. Why would he randomly just say something that sounds so ludicrously like crazy, make himself sound crazy? Talking about the Sasquatch out in the middle of nowhere has talked to him telepathically. Like, why would
When
you risk
when
ruining your
more
credibility?
exactly when more credible people start talking about it, that makes me feel I'm not a nut. I know.
You know,
I love these stories.
like you're going to lose a lot of your credibility when you tell something like that to people. But I mean, he had no problem talking about it. So it kind of makes you wonder if this dude's experiencing something out in the woods like that too, and other people are reporting it, and it's not just a Bigfoot type thing. Which again, he didn't ever see what was talking to him. So
Now,
who's to
see,
say
that's a
that?
great point too, because you the first article I wrote for Paranormal Underground talks about people who have experiences but have not said anything about it. It makes you wonder the people who have had experiences who have not said nothing about it, or the ones like in more conservative communities where they just don't say nothing about the bad stuff. Like then that's how big like Navajo people are really too. They will kick you out of their community if you talk about any of their stuff, especially it's called frenzy witchcraft. If you talk about that stuff, man, they're gonna give you the boot really bad. You're not gonna be allowed in there. And there's a book that was written in the 60s or 50s, Navajo witchcraft. The guy had to do a lot. He had to bend his back to get any kind of interview with any of those shamans. And I believe the shaman that he interviewed for the book got like expelled from the Navajo Nation for talking to him. But it's a famous book on the whole witchcraft lore in their community. That's the article that I wrote. It talks about people who have these experiences who don't know how to explain them and just brush it off. And it makes me wonder how many people are out there who have some good material, but
Yeah.
haven't said nothing about it.
That's why I do this podcast, because up until last year, I only told a handful of people here and there, maybe, of what I experienced, but I wasn't the only one that saw what I saw. There was someone else, but that person refused to talk about it and said if I ever brought it up again, they were going to deny it and just say I was crazy, because they don't like being,
That's
they
what
don't
I'm
want,
talking about.
they don't want that attention, thinking that we're all crazy.
Hey man, anonymous, let's do it.
Yeah. That's what I've always told people. Like, you can come on and share your stories with me. Don't have to use your name. And if you're worried about your voice, I can set it up to where I can change the pitch of your voice to where it doesn't sound like you.
That's cool. Technology, man.
Yep. There's there's just a couple little things I got to switch around, but I can make it to where it doesn't sound like that person. So anyone out there listening, if you're checking out this podcast, you're more than welcome to come on here, and no one will have to know it's you.
Cool, cool. Well, I mean, I don't have anything else. If there's anything else you want to talk about,
No, I think we can about wrap this up. I do definitely appreciate you coming out here and sharing that with me. It's again, like I was saying a little bit earlier, it's definitely a story that I think needs to be out there, because not that it's the same story, but it does line up with similar accounts from people that have had run-ins with these weird things of calling out to you, or come out to them,
the
or
innocence.
yeah, like I just, and it always seems to happen towards the younger people. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're just more easily persuaded, I guess, naive about things. I don't know.
Hmm.
If something was like out, now that's where I would get really freaked out by, is if I was to ever hear like sound like my kid or my wife screaming for me outside.
Oh,
And
yeah. If my kid, I try not to imagine what would happen if he had opened the door, because I don't know
what
what
would have been
the
out there?
purpose was. Yeah,
Yeah.
the purpose of that thing was.
Yeah. That's, as a parent, that's something that terrifying. But well, Albert, again, I appreciate you coming out here and talk with me tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime you ever want to talk Skinwalker, I'm available.
We'll do that here on the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brandon.
Yep. Have a good one. Thank
You
you.
too.